Now, before we go on to tetrameter and pentameter lines, I would like to explain something to you. You must have noticed that in some poems, if they have got to write it is, they won't write it is. They'll put that apostrophe and they'll write tis, T-I-S. Now, why do poets do that? Or instead of writing over, O-V-E-R, they'll write O, they'll put that apostrophe on top because they are going to remove V, and they'll write ER, O apostrophe ER. So instead of over, you have or. What is the benefit in this? Why do poets do this? For this reason. Suppose they have planned to write a poem in, let's say, tetrameter or pentameter. If they write over, when they start counting the syllables, it may end up as 9. So, what they will do is they will have to cut something to fit it in that 8 scheme. And so they'll write or instead of over. So 2 syllables, over. A single word over contains 2 syllables. Over. Over. 2 syllables. Now by removing that V, they get or. It becomes 1 single syllable. Similarly, it is 2 syllables. So what do? They remove that I and they make it tis. It is 2 syllables. Remove I, put that apostrophe, make it tis. Single syllable. They do this. This is one thing that you need to remember. Another thing that you need to remember is that a poem is often something that can be sung. See, many of you must be going for these Kavi Sammelans, or you must be watching them. They are basically poems which can be sung. So there is a certain rhythm to it. And so in those lines of a poem, you may find that 4 or 5 lines exactly follow the tetrameter or pentameter or whatever meter. And then you reach a line which, when you count, you feel that, oh, this is only maybe 6 syllables, this is not 8. Then you'll have to learn to prolong it to fit it into that mold of the 8. I'll give you both these examples right now. You can pay careful attention. Now, let's look at Daffodils by William Wordsworth. It's a very, very well-known poem by Wordsworth, and any literature student ought to know this poem because in the last stanza of this poem, there are some very, very beautiful things that you should take note of in this poem. I'll take this opportunity to give you some brief things about this. There is a figure of speech known as pathetic fallacy. Pathetic fallacy. It's a figure of speech. Now, pathetic doesn't mean sad or unhappy or anything. It only has a relationship with the word emotion. In poetry, when the poet shows nature participating in human emotions, it is an example of pathetic fallacy. Now, those human emotions could be sad, and those human emotions could be happy as well. It doesn't matter. So when you look at a a poem like Adonais by Shelley, and Shelley wrote it after John Keats died. It's an elegy for John Keats. And in that, there is a beautiful pathetic fallacy. Now, John Keats has died, this great poet has died. And so, day, morning, she is deeply unhappy, she is grieving, and she has opened her hair, and so everything is dark. We have that concept of Kop Bhavan, and the first thing you come to know about this Kop Bhavan business is that the hair gets open. Kekai opened her hair and she went into Kop Bhavan. The Kop Bhavan and hair have some kind of association. So now what she's doing is she's throwing a tantrum. And so John Keats has died. The morning is grieving and she has opened her hair, which means there is still darkness. There is going to be no light because morning has decided that she's too unhappy to cause light, and so she's going to sit with her hair open and she's going to grieve. Everyone is grieving at the death of John Keats. So morning also grieves. Here nature is participating in that human grief. This is a beautiful example of pathetic fallacy. You have such a pathetic fallacy in William Wordsworth's poem Daffodils, where the poet is feeling so happy and the daffodils are joining in his happiness. And so this is an example of pathetic fallacy. And now, if you've opened the text before you, I'll just go through the lines so that you can understand what tetrameter is all about. But before I come to that, I would like you to take a look at the last stanza of this poem. The lines are, "For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude, and then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils." William Wordsworth came up with a theory, he said emotions recollected in tranquility. Now, it's not a complete theory in itself, but it is his idea of how a poem can be composed. And what Wordsworth felt was that when you look at a beautiful object and you start writing about it, what you will tend to do is that you will get overexcited, and in that state of overexcitement, you will write something which might become just an exaggerated feeling. What needs to happen is that the emotions should be that of excitement, but there should be a kind of balance while expressing those emotions in poetry. So Wordsworth felt that when you look at something beautiful, just store it in your mind. Allow it to remain in your mind and imagination. And then after quite some time, allow some time to pass. And then one day when you are sitting in a peaceful, pensive state of mind, you are sitting in a state of mind which allows you to recollect some things. It allows you to muse, to ponder. Then what happens is those images which have been stored in your imagination, they flash across the mental eye. Now you are re-looking that thing. The first time you looked at it, you were very excited. Now you are re-looking, it's a second kind of look that you are giving that thing. And now that excess emotion that has gone over, and now what is left is that true emotion. And that true emotion has a lot of creative power. And now it would be just right to compose poetry on that object which was seen long back, but which is being recollected now. So, what does he say? He has seen wonderful daffodils, beautiful daffodils. And those daffodils are so beautiful, they are yellow colored, but to his eye, they appear golden. So he has seen those daffodils, and now he's going to move away from that scene. He will move away from that scene, and what will happen is, at some point in time later on, he will sit by himself. Now see what he says. For often, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood. So he's in that thoughtful state of mind. They flash upon that inward eye, the golden daffodils. They flash upon that inward eye, the mental eye, the eye of imagination. They flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. That is the pleasure of being alone with one's thoughts. This is a gift that poets have, painters have, artists have, philosophers have. So, and then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. He's able to re-experience that pleasure, and he's able to create poetry about it. So this is something, emotions recollected in tranquility. This is something that Wordsworth said. And when you take a look at this poem, the first line, now these are three people. It is William Wordsworth, his sister Dorothy, and his friend Samuel Taylor Coleridge. All three of them are seeing those beautiful daffodils. But the experience of the three is reduced to the experience of one. Look at the opening line of the poem. First line. When I. So now what happens? So when I is not the exact way the poem begins. The sense is that the other two have got excluded. Only he. I wandered lonely as a cloud. Why I? There were three people. I, because he's trying to tell you that yes, all three of us were there. But this pleasurable experience, the first time these people, all three of them saw that is the work of the primary imagination. The primary imagination is something that a baby has, an old man has, old woman has, everyone has. We are able to receive through the five senses because we are living. Primary imagination. But there is an imagination higher than this, not different from this, higher than this, which is exercised by artists, poets, painters, musicians, philosophers, and that is what we call the secondary imagination. And in that state of imagination, the artist or the poet or the painter, he withdraws into a shell-like state where he's all alone with those thoughts. So now, when these three people were wandering there, that has got reduced to I. It's a personal pronoun. I wandered lonely as a cloud. The experience of those three, primary imagination, from there the poet Wordsworth has shifted to a higher emotional state, which is that of the secondary imagination. And now it is his personal experience, how he's going to look at those daffodils and how he's going to enjoy them. This is going to be his personal experience. Now let's come to the tetrameter part and look at the first line. I wandered lonely as a cloud. Cloud may have O and U together, two vowels, but the sound is one. What we call in Hindi, O aurat wala, cloud. Both together create one sound. It's a diphthong. A diphthong is treated as a single sound, although it's made up of two sounds. So I wandered lonely as a cloud. Now lone has a silent E at the end, but you can't hear it. Lone. You can forget the L and N, O. Next line. That floats on high o'er. See, it's not over. O'er. Vales and hills. If it had been over, it would have become 9 syllables, and the poet wants only 8. Third line, when all at once I saw a crowd, like cloud, crowd. Then a host of golden daffodils. So now this is an example of tetrameter. Now let's look at, you can work the rest of the poem out. Let's look at Solitary Reaper by William Wordsworth. So Solitary Reaper, if you look at the first line, behold, the line is behold her single in the field. Next line, yon solitary highland lass, reaping and singing by herself, stop here or gently pass. Alone she cuts and binds the grain and sings a melancholy strain. Oh, listen, for the wail profound is overflowing with the sound. Now, you can work out the rest of the poem. I'll help you do this. Behold her single in the field. 8 syllables, 4 feet, tetrameter. Yon solitary highland lass, reaping and singing by herself. 8 syllables. Stop here or gently pass. Now you're doing some different thing here, because the first 3 lines had a certain kind of, tetrameter formation, and this can be sung like a song. So you'll have to extend that last word to complete that cycle of 8. Stop here or gently pass. Alone she cuts and binds the grain. There's only one single sound, A. Then and sings a melancholy strain. Oh, listen for the wail profound is overflowing with the sound. Now this is tetrameter. Now let's go to John Milton's On His Blindness by John Milton. This is an example of pentameter, 5 feet and 10 syllables. So the poet says, this is the first poem in which the poet has made a reference to his blindness. So the poet says, when I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent. So these are, pentameter lines. Each line has 5 feet and 10 syllables. And this is a poem in which, this is a sonnet. This is a Miltonic sonnet. We will be doing a video on sonnets, and we will be doing it in 3 parts. Because you need to have a basic understanding of the sonnet, then you can have the Italian sonnet, the English sonnet, and you can have examples of them. And in the 3rd video, you can do other sonnets, Curtal sonnet and Rilkean sonnet and this and that.